India in agriculture far behind China, and the enemies within who stopped equality. Just imagine, if someone told you that in 1947, when India gained independence, our economic and agricultural strength was almost equal to China's, you'd probably believe it. But if I told you that today, in 2025, China's agricultural productivity is almost double that of India, wouldn't that sound shocking? Both nations began their journeys after independence almost at the same level. Both were agrarian economies, both had massive populations, and both had pledged to eliminate poverty. Yet, 70 years later, China not only overtook India, but turned agriculture into the engine of its economic power. And India? India remained stuck in the swamp of subsidies, policies, and politics. India's agriculture, once called the soul of the nation, has now become one of its biggest puzzles of development. Economist Devesh Kapur calls it one of India's strangest failures. He says, no large nation has ever developed without a strong agricultural base. And unfortunately, India has forgotten this truth. But the real question isn't how China surged ahead. It's why India fell behind. Who were the enemies that never let this equality happen? Were they foreign powers? No. They were our own, our policies, our politics, and a mindset that turned the farmer into a vote bank, not the center of development. In the 1940s and 1950s, both India and China had almost identical economic structures. Over 70% of their populations depended on farming. But after its revolution, China implemented land reforms first. Large landlords' properties were confiscated and redistributed among small farmers. The result? Millions of farmers became landowners and worked harder, increasing productivity dramatically. In India, too, land reform was discussed, but the political influence of landlords ensured it was never properly implemented. In the early years of Congress rule, most state-level leaders themselves came from landed elite families. The very people who were supposed to give up their land were the ones making the laws. Economist Devesh Kapur put it sharply. Land reforms in India became impossible because of democracy. Since in a democracy, power lies with those who were supposed to be changed. The second major reason was India's federal structure. Agriculture was a state subject, meaning it was under the control of state governments. The central government could make policies, but implementation was in the hands of the states. And when every state's politics was fragmented by caste equations, vote banks, and local factions, a unified national vision for agriculture could never emerge. The Green Revolution of the 1960s did save India from famine, but it also deepened inequality. Regions like Punjab, Haryana, and western Uttar Pradesh saw huge increases in wheat and rice yields, but the rest of the country lagged behind. Governments continued to give subsidies on fertilizer, electricity, and water, yet farmers' incomes did not rise, only their costs and dependencies did. The original goal of the Green Revolution was to increase production. But in the following decades, policies shifted toward increasing votes. Subsidies and MSP, minimum support price, became political weapons. Politicians kept telling farmers, "We'll give you a better price." But no one asked the real question. Why isn't the farmer's yield increasing? Even today, India produces an average of 2.8 tons of wheat per hectare, while China produces 5.5 tons on the same amount of land. That means a Chinese farmer produces almost twice as much as an Indian farmer under the same sun and rain. So where does the difference lie? The difference is in mindset. China turned its farmers into innovators, while India turned them into beneficiaries. While China aggressively pursued agricultural reforms, India remained tangled in confusion and politics. Devesh Kapur says, whatever progress has happened in Indian agriculture has occurred outside the government's control. In other words, these sectors where government interference was minimal, such as horticulture, dairy, fruits, vegetables, and poultry, have shown remarkable growth. But in areas where the government remained deeply involved through subsidies, price controls, and procurement policies, such as grains, progress has stagnated. Milk, eggs, fruits, and vegetables became the new agricultural revolutions of India, because in these sectors, farmers experimented freely, markets decided the prices, and government interference was minimal. Meanwhile, traditional crops like wheat and rice are still trapped in the policy wave designed back in the 1970s. India's leaders never viewed farmers as producers, but rather as consumers, caught in the politics of providing cheap electricity, water, and seeds. The result? Instead of becoming self-reliant, the farmer became dependent on government aid. Economist Arvind Subramanian, who has worked with Devesh Kapur on this issue, says, India's biggest mistake was neglecting agriculture. We prioritized industrialization and left farming behind. India's early development plans, such as the Mahalanobis model, focused on heavy industries and steel plants. The idea was that industries would generate employment and farmers would eventually migrate to cities. But the opposite happened. Industries depended on agriculture for raw materials and labor, while the farmer received nothing in return. The big question remains, why didn't India follow the path of Japan, South Korea, or Taiwan? These nations first carried out land reforms, made agriculture productive, raised farmers' incomes, and then built their industries. India did the reverse. It built industries first, and only later realized that its farmers were still poor. Today, agriculture contributes only 16% to India's GDP, yet 43% of the population still depends on farming for their livelihood. That imbalance remains the single biggest cause of poverty in India. Now let's talk about the third enemy, the hunger for political gain. Every government in India has given farmers concessions, but never true reforms. Electricity was made free for votes, but no long-term plan was made to improve irrigation. Loans were waived, but market reforms were ignored. Every budget has carried the slogan of Kisan Kalyan, farmer welfare. Yet a farmer's real income has grown by barely 30% in the last 10 years. Devesh Kapur says, India's leaders lacked imagination. They could never look beyond their vote banks. That's why agricultural policy in India has remained stuck in status quo, afraid to try anything new, fearing public unrest. Whenever any government has attempted reform, protests erupt. The 2020 farm laws are a perfect example. Their aim was to open agricultural markets, but the lack of communication and trust frightened the farmers. The result, the government had to roll them back. This failure wasn't just of the government. It was a failure of our collective mindset. We fear change, and a society that fears change can never achieve equality. The politics of subsidies has caused another major loss, the death of innovation. Chinese farmers are among the fastest in the world to adopt new technologies. In China, drone-based pesticide spraying, digital soil mapping, and AI-driven irrigation systems are already common. In India, however, most farmers still look at the sky to predict the weather. India spends only 0.6% of its GDP on agricultural research and development (R&D). China spends 3 times more. That's why China keeps producing new crop varieties, hybrid seeds, and efficient irrigation systems, while India continues to rely on decades-old methods. Now think about it. When the foundation of all these systems is weak, how can production ever rise? Another major failure of India's agriculture is the lack of agricultural education and training. Our agricultural universities hand out degrees but fail to deliver knowledge to the farmers. As a result, farmers remain stuck with old techniques, while government officers only improve statistics on paper. Today, an average farmer in China earns around $2,000 per year from his land, while in India, that figure is only $800. This isn't just a difference in yield, it's a difference in mindset, policy, and leadership. Every new Indian government has raised slogans about agricultural reform, but none have taken real steps toward land leasing reform, market restructuring, or logistics improvement. Even today, an Indian farmer spends nearly 15% of his costs just to transport his crop to the market. And when it finally reaches there, middlemen take away nearly 40% of the profit. There's another side to inequality in Indian agriculture: women farmers. Nearly 40% of India's farmers are women, yet only 12% of the land is registered in their names. In other words, women do the hard work, but the ownership lies elsewhere. This social imbalance further weakens India's agricultural foundation. So the question arises, can India still catch up with China? The answer is yes, but only if we change our mindset. India doesn't need policies of assistance, it needs policies of empowerment. Instead of subsidies, we need to invest in innovation, research, and market reform. Farmers must be trained in digital technology, data analytics, and climate-smart agriculture. We must break free from the mindset that treats the farmer merely as a voter. We need to transform them into entrepreneurs. Just like China, which turned its farmers into agri-entrepreneurs, people with their own bradsa, supply chains, and export deals. India still holds that potential. We have the largest agricultural area in the world, the most diverse range of crops, and some of the hardest working farmers on the planet. All we need is a system that doesn't restrict them, but allows them to fly. If in the coming decade, India invests seriously in land reforms, agricultural education, and R&D, it can not only catch up with China, but even surpass it in certain areas. But if we continue to remain trapped in the politics of subsidies, MSP, and loan waivers, then we may keep winning elections, but not the farmer's future. The comparison between China and India isn't just about numbers, it's about vision. China empowered its farmers. India merely supported them. And that's the real difference. Empowerment is permanent, support is temporary. Yet, this story doesn't have to end in despair. Change is possible, and in some places, it has already begun. Maharashtra is witnessing success through drip irrigation, Gujarat has introduced new models of cooperative farming, Kerala has thriving women-led farming groups, and Punjab is seeing the rise of organic farmer networks. This is the real India, an India that, if united and visionary, has the power to not only match China, but even leave it behind.
If our video has taught you something new, do not forget to like and share this video so that this information can reach others as well. Your likes and shares are a source of inspiration for us. If you have any questions or suggestions, please let us know in the comments. It will be our honor to answer your questions and listen to suggestions. And yes, if you like our content, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so that you stay connected with every new story. Thank you. GRT Business YouTube channel sources, news from various news agencies, opinion polls and other public sources. We try to ensure that every report and summary is accurate and verified, but we are not responsible for any dispute or error. Our aim is only to provide you with accurate information.